particularly I see a lot of trade-based businesses and builders aren't often bringing in enough expertise from the financial side. They have great contract administrators, they have great subbies they work with, but often the back office, for want of a better term, is not as well managed as it could be because they just don't have the expertise. And I see many construction companies that have accountants that basically see them once a year and do their tax, and are what I call compliance accountants, as versus the proactive style that you use and using your cash flow modeling and so forth, manage them to see how valuable a project can be and maintain profit. Because with a few variations, a project that was looking quite profitable can fall down the toilet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting that you mentioned about that fact that traditionally speaking, there's a gap between the back office and front office, as in regards to what the business has completed, right? And how to measure what you complete and be able to understand what's going to happen. So it's not that people hasn't put enough focus on this, but there hasn't been enough support provided by that can be offered by the bookkeeper or by their traditional compliance accountant, as you mentioned. So it's interesting that like we're looking at this as a three-layer system. All right. The first layer is your mechanism, all right, which is what kind of system that do you use. These days, we still walking into a builder's office and seeing a majority of the record keeping is done by Excel on the projects, or people just simply rely on their accounting system to tell where they are with the business, which is not sufficient. So I would say that having that layer, having a digitalized construction management system is the number one thing that business need to look at, right, in order to managing the financial information. And the second thing is the input, right? That's when you start having a system that you can have a software like a Protocol, Builder, Trend, Wonderbuild. They all providing good system, but then the next level is what kind of information that you actually put into the system. There, if we like, for example, if we only record a budget in the system, but we forget to track, or we don't have a standard operating procedure that team is following to put in the data on a monthly basis, you get nothing out of that. Full stop. Right. And that system can only help you do the contracting, not the management. Right. So it's only when you have the valid input into the system, then you actually build a foundation for further analysis, which is the third step, which is the output of from that system and that data. That's when we sit down with client on monthly basis, fortnightly basis to go through the data, to zoom out and zoom in. What I mean is, like, as a business owner, you don't want to looking at every transaction. That's too much of work, right? So you need to zoom out, looking at the project, like having the key metrics. What is your project to date? What is your project to date budget? What is the project to go budget? What has changed in your project? What has changed on the schedule? What has changed on the money? What each project is going to look at? What overall business looks like? How is your running cost change? These metrics, right, are important, but it sounds complicated, but doesn't take you more than 30 minutes to go through all the metrics every month. And once you go through the metric, you have your original budget, right? You can compare what has changed, and then once you see the change, you zoom in to the transaction level detail for that area to identify what really changed in the business, why it's changed, and create a solution to mitigate the financial impact. So that's end to end. But also, if you have these three layers built up properly, and you have a fractional CFO like us or someone else looking after the business, then you shouldn't spend more than like 90 minutes a month to understand fully about what happened in your business financially and create a solution that can mitigate the risk or utilize opportunities.
Yeah. And look, I'm using your three-layer model. I know there are some really great construction tools out there, but once again, the problem is input. It's you can load up a new piece of software and away you go, but the actual problem of getting the correct input regularly, and tracking what's going on. So this is one of the areas that I've seen constantly as a bit of a drag. And once you empower yourself, as you've said, and put the right inputs into the right system, you can very quickly see how the business is tracking. And forewarned is forearmed. I think that a lot of business owners look at what's not in the bank or what's coming in, and don't really understand how expenses and profitability and cash flow all sort of match up. And this causes a lot of heartache for them. But with the right sort of tools and properly implemented, they can get a good handle of their business. Because what I often see, and when you come to the finance side, you look very closely at these things, is that sometimes people are very good at constructing and doing that thing, or they might be plumbers, or they might be electricians, and they're very good on the tools, but it's often a need to sort of re-educate them to the financial realities of running a business, particularly as the business grows.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably the biggest trap that in the construction business, that it's too easy to grow, right? Quite often that I'll sit down with a contractor, that first thing that they will be talking about is next 5 years plan, right? How do I grow from right, a one-man brand to the current office that having dozens of people working for me, and where my business is going to be in like next 12 months, next 5 years, what kind of opportunity that we have. And then my reaction to that is normally like, okay, that's great, right? Now let's look at the book. And that's when you start seeing that people showing a different face, like, oh, okay, now let's talking about challenge, right? But the reality is, for a good operator, right? Like for people who know how to construct, the market will reward them very quickly. The reward them with more projects, with higher value contracts, and it's every contract value can anywhere between a couple $100,000 to a couple $1 million, right? And so it's very easy to build up that revenue, and people judge you by revenue these days. And so it's very easy for people to get that feeling of success. I remember we had this discussion about borrow when you can, not when you need it. That's the exact journey that we talk about.
Yes.
Like a lot of
Yeah.
business, this is a question that I come back from time to time when I'm talking to builder and contractors, and people asking, I have money in the bank, right? Why do I borrow? I know that the payable ledger is building up, but people are willing to work with me. People are giving me the credit. So why do I need more money? The answer to that is like, it's like I give them example. It's like buying a house. What we need to realize is every project that we take is like an investment. You invest not just your skill, but also your working capitals into that projects. So the more projects we take, the higher volume that we do, the more working capital that we need to put in. When we try to leverage with our supplier, which is not wrong, but if we try to leverage on that, that we're pushing that to the edge very quickly. And when we push them to the edge and we're trying to come back to the finance again, there's much less options.
Yeah.
And it's much more difficult.
That's right. Everybody tends to go too late, because the best time to borrow money is when you don't really need it. And I know that sounds strange, but and I often quote the example. Let's say, to keep it simple, the business has $1 million turnover. It's going to have $200,000 worth of debtors, so it has to have at least 200,000 working capital. And then you grow the business and you grow it to $2 million turnover. Well, then all of a sudden you need $400,000 working capital, and people don't have it. So that's where you have to look at using tools like debtor and trade finance to solve that gap, that cash gap that occurs because you just don't have enough working capital in the business. And someone who's had a really good year and has reached that, let's say, $1 million turnover, they need to think about what's going to happen when they're at $5 million turnover.